students took out a midnight protest on a campus of a private engineering college in Krishna district of Andhra. Gudlavalleru Engineering College allegedly. The allegations are that there were hidden cameras in the girls' washrooms. The allegations are also that scores of videos were recorded. Police rushed to the scene and began the probe. Cops say they are yet to recover any hidden or spy camera. The Chief Minister ordered for a probe. In fact, we are told Chief Minister is monitoring the probe himself. Cops have claimed that they are yet to recover the alleged CCTV or hidden camera or the videos. Concerns around this incident, though, are numerous. Safety of women, young girls in the hostel itself, and worryingly, the eye in your washroom and the sheer hunger for voyeurism, which increasingly isn't an isolated case. And when I say it isn't an isolated case, here's the big concern. Over the last 2 years, there have been at least 4 instances that have been reported. And as I said earlier, if you look at the past 2 to 5 years, there have been at least 20 such cases that have been reported in the mainstream media. Let's look at some big instances over the last few years. Remember the third wave coffee in Bengaluru? A phone was hidden in the washroom dustbin. It was found out by a woman customer who took to the social media. The phone was on flight mode with the camera switched on. The employee was eventually arrested. Urvashi Theatre in Bengaluru, again this year, 2 teenage boys filmed women in a washroom of a theatre. Both accused teens were later arrested. Remember, again, these are teenagers. You also have 2 instances from Kerala, where in one case, a techie was arrested for planting a camera in a Kochi mall, in a very big, prominent mall in Kochi. In a women's bathroom, the accused entered a prominent mall and later wore a burqa, eventually entered the women's restroom, where the accused placed a mobile phone equipped with a camera inside a box. He then discreetly made a hole in the box for the camera's lens. In another case from Kochi, hidden camera in a women's hostel. The man was arrested. The university strengthened its security for the women's hostel. You all may remember the 2015 instance of Fab India in Goa, where a camera was discovered by Smriti Irani and the camera was pointing towards the trial room. 4 employees were arrested. Another instance in 2016 where you had the case of a public restroom in a mall being the scene of crime, literally, and you had a spy camera put on inside that restroom. It was found inside a women's restroom again, and there were calls, loud calls, and anger for strict regulations. What's come out of that? Well, we all have seen several instances even since then. By the way, this despite the fact that voyeurism by itself is a punishable offense. So you have women being recorded during a private act, and then you have categories of punishment for the first-time offenders, then you have the second-time offenders, you have the repeat offenders, imprisonment that ranges for years for that matter. This also involves gender-neutral provisions, so it doesn't really have to be only where the women are victims. It could also be where the men are victims as well. And there's also imprisonment and lakhs. And I'm only talking about voyeurism, but frankly, such crimes now come under so many other criteria as well. But what should we do? Particularly when there are increasing instances where even if you're going into a public place, into a public washroom, you just have the possibility of a spy camera or a hidden camera or a phone being hidden. Are we meant to be as helpless as we sound in these cases? Joining us right now are a panel of experts. We have Pawan Duggal, who is a cybersecurity expert, Dr. Vikram Singh, who's a former DGP, Dr. Vikram Singh, who's a former DGP for Uttar Pradesh, and Saher Bhamla, who's a activist, Lloyd Mathias, who's a technology analyst, as well as Astha Bhardwaj, who joins me in the studio. And she's my colleague at Mirror Now. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. This is a very sensitive issue. But first, allow me to come to you, Dr. Vikram Singh. And I'm coming to you because you're also part of a university, and you're also part of a, you've been a top police official. What do you say when you hear instances like this? Whether it be women who are coming out to protest in the night, fearing that there are spy cameras inside their washrooms in a hostel, or whether it be hidden cameras inside washrooms in public spaces, from a coffee shop to a theater. How strict are the punishments, or do you think it's just about pretty much lenient?
There are two aspects to the problem. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I said that I have hands-on experience, and so has Dr. Pawan Duggalji. We have worked together. And I would like to tell you that where there is a will, there is a way. You very rightly mentioned that Section 7 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita has adequate provisions of punishment. But the lax punishment and the propensity to look the other way, Sneha, is the problem. We certainly do not address the problem, and when the complaints come, sweep it underneath the carpet for obvious reasons, for creating embarrassment. So the reality should be, Sneha, there should be zero tolerance. Firstly, there should be no complaint. The internal vigilance should be such that nobody should have the audacity or the brazenness to install spy cameras. And if somebody has a suicidal tendency, when I say suicidal tendency, unless a person is in his right senses, he will not even think of doing something as atrocious as this. And if it does, there will be consequences, both departmental and legal, which
Dr.
we have
Vikram,
done.
did I hear you correct?
Technology.
Did you say suicide tendencies? Did I hear you correct? Is that what you used, the word?
Yes, I did. That's why I repeated twice. Unless a person has the capacity to harm himself, he would not even dream of doing a thing like that. I said that because no person in his right frame of mind would even dream of doing such a thing if he knows the consequences are going to be terrible. Your career is finished. There will be blemish for a lifetime. And once he's brought on history sheet, his days for any job, government or private, or getting a job are finished. That is why I use the word suicidal. And I'm very strict about that in my university. Anybody even who looks that way has all scope of promotion, going abroad, getting scholarships, getting a job, private or government sector, are absolutely over. Then the use of technology is there. I show before you a small very user-friendly AI spy camera detector. Please see this. I would say that you feel that is a requirement, install it in your mobile phones, use it, and I'm sure it has a very good success rate. You can detect spy cameras. But in position of authority, like I'm the chancellor of a private university, I would take pains to ensure that there is no such contraption there, and I can find out those people who have a propensity and they are in fact given the fear of a lifetime. Don't even look that way, because if you do, as you very rightly mentioned, unless a person has a tremendous propensity of harming himself, he would not even look that way. Now, why does will person do it? Is it privately? No. There is some economics also. There's a black market of these videos. 300 videos are reportedly made in this college, and they would sell for a small fortune. And therefore, there's an economic angle also to selling them in areas like the Gafar market and such areas, which I would not like to mention because youngsters also listen. I would not to give them ideas. But yes, since there is a market, it can translate into pocket money. Therefore, it is for the police to understand the financial ramifications of the whole issue,
right,
then get to the finances, those who are dealing with this and those who are making them.
All right. Let me just introduce my colleague at this time, Astha Bhardwaj. And the reason why we decided to get Astha on board is because our newsroom is full of young women who are working in PGs, who are working in hostels, or working in women hostels. And they largely live in those spaces because there's a sense of safety. Their families feel safe about it. There seems to be a notion that at least they are with women and therefore they are safer, and so on and so forth, with the security arrangements as well. But Astha, if I can ask you, how does this play on your mind as a working professional when you hear these kind of reports, has things changed for you? When you go out to a coffee shop or to any for that matter, is this a point of concern for you and your women colleagues? Are these conversations that you all have as women in your social circles? Does it bother? Does it matter?
Thank you for having me on the show, Sneha. Very pertinent questions raised. Let me start by saying that time and again I've written top bands saying country is safe for women. But today, while I was writing a headline on this story, I suddenly realized that peeping terror is real. I've always believed that there were eyes all around us, women are nowhere safe. And the feeling was unsettling because I realized if I go back to my PG, there might be a camera at my inside my washroom. And this feeling was so unsettling that I called my mom, I told her that this is for real. And every time I go out, I hesitate. I don't use the washroom. I tell my friends, female friends, to not use washrooms. Such is the fear. And this is practically not possible.
Are you saying you don't use washrooms when you go out of your PG, your office or whatsoever because?
Because I think there might be a camera there. Who knows? And someday when I'm sitting in my place, I see a story and the story may or may not happen, but I have that fear. That what if I use this washroom, there's a camera and my personal things are recorded?
Is this just about you, or do you have other women or other friends who are women who have concerns like this?
I have a lot of female friends who've told me this. In fact, male friends, they don't want to use washrooms. Imagine if it's about gender, it is terrifying. What about the opposite gender? Even they also don't want to use the washrooms. Because this peeping terror is common.
Okay, let me just get in at this point, Mr. Pavan Dugal. Mr. Pavan Dugal, you heard my colleague speak, and you of course heard the former top cop speak as well. Mr. Pavan Dugal, this is so real. This is so real that it's horrifying, it's unsettling. It's unsettling for women, it's unsettling for men, it's unsettling for families. What must one really do? How should one respond to something like this? Because, you know, some may call this as a paranoia, but it's a reality. It may be happening to 1 out of 100, but it's happening. And it's very unsettling for young women, for anybody for that matter, to think that this could be happening to them, from coffee shops to theaters to universities to hostels. The spy cam, the eye that's watching you, the invisible eye that's watching you is a real threat.
No wonder we have to have a changed mindset in today's times. We have to realize post-COVID-19, we have already stepped into a new age, a new world, where I call is the new cyber world order. This new cyber world order, peeping toms are going to be everywhere. Cybercrime will be our daily companion, and cybersecurity breaches the new normal. So in a scenario like this, it's but natural that we must start inculcating an element of mistrust, distrust in any information that I see, till such time I'm able to authenticate the veracity of the same. So consequently, let's go with the basic presumption there will be peeping toms everywhere. My scenario is, what can I do once I get inside a premises or a room or a toilet or a washroom or whatever? I think the time has come where we cannot take these facilities for granted. Why? Because of this huge cybercrime economy, which is thriving on these kinds of obscene videos and obscene photographs. So in a scenario like this, let's promise to ourselves, we go into a public space, a public washroom. The first thing that we need to do is look all around. Naked eye test has to be our first port of call. Our eyes need to scan everything that we see around. Do I see something suspicious? Is there something hidden? If you are satisfied, that's fine. If you think you have the ability to control the electricity, or you can shut off the light of that room, please do that and use your phone's flashlight to just see around. Because if there's a hidden camera, the chances of the flashlight hitting that particular lens and a small light emanating cannot be ruled out. These are some basic things. I'm not saying carry a lens detector. I'm not saying get that much paranoid, but I'm saying please learn to respect that we have to protect our own privacy. We are our own safeguarding angels. And that being so, I cannot go ahead and outsource this responsibility to someone else. Why? The Supreme Court says the right to privacy is my fundamental right. But when the private sector, when the so-called people who don't follow or come within the definition of state under Article 12 of the Constitution, go ahead and openly violate my privacy, both as a woman, as a man, I think I need to stand up to first go ahead and protect myself and then potentially report and even go ahead and take recourse to legal remedies.
You know, let me just get in Saher Bhamla at this point. Saher Bhamla, you heard what Mr. Dugal was saying. And, you know, it may be so real for all of us, Saher. At the end of the day, as women, using public toilets is not easy. And I'm particularly talking about women, and I'm not going to talk about men. It's also the way we use the washrooms, the public washrooms as well. You would use a public washroom if you really, really have to. And when you really have to use a public washroom, and I'm making this as simple as it can, because this is a question that everybody is having in mind. You're a woman, you use a public washroom. You will use a public washroom only if you have to, if it's absolutely urgent, and you can't hold it anymore. And then you go inside the washroom and do what? Check around?
I don't think we as women should be put in a place where we have to even check for something like, using the restroom. I think it's a shame reading this news, and it should put anyone to shame, because at this point of time, women are tired. Honestly, we are very tired with everything that's happening in our country. So over a few months, every woman I speak to feels disappointed with this government, the action that's been taken towards criminals, disappointed towards law and order. Why should we think before using the restroom when men can, even they use the restroom openly, like public spaces? Why are we put in such situations? Here is another example of, a girl being in her own so-called safe space, at least with regards to this case, where not only is the target to predators, but tell me, if someone can sneak in a camera, would he not think even once before assaulting that girl? This country, our society, is nothing but a dark hole where, women are only sucked into, and there's no coming back from there. The silence of our leaders is shameful. The lack of concern on this matter is shameful. The sloppy pace of police, courts, and everyone involved in this, in the safety of Indian women is shameful. Even after all this, why are we waiting for more cases to come up? So we take women's safety seriously. Why is it not taken seriously? Why is there a question of us waiting and controlling to use the restroom? Like, this is bizarre. I mean, what about the people who got the videos of the girl, and aren't they going to be held accountable? And she was at her educational place, but still she was unsafe. So we normally say beti bachao, beti padhao. As per me, I think bete ko padhao, bete ko bachao, और bete को एक दरिंदा बनने से भी रोको. Because I don't think that we should. It's not right, whatever was happening.
Okay. All right. I get your point, and I have Lloyd Mathias as well, but allow me a few minutes, Mr. Lloyd Mathias. Allow me 2 minutes. I just want to go to my colleague, Astha Bhardwaj again. Astha, how equipped are you with technology? Because technology is supposed to make life easier for us. When there is a trouble, we are told, use this app, press this button, do this, use your phone. And then you have that same technology that is also in a very threatening phase. Do you feel you're equipped enough as a young woman to be able to be at the point of interception for both of these?
Sneha, like I said, if I have to use a washroom, do you think if it's that urgent, I will hold up my phone, use a torch, and be all equipped, even if I know everything about technology? Here I am accepting that I don't know at all. Like, I don't know about tech. But do you think in times of emergency, I would know these things and I would resort to these things? And why, my basic question is, why am I supposed to do this? Why can't everybody, including my parents, you, the system, why can't they assure a safe place for me? Every time I go out, I have this fear. So the fear is just not in my mind. Even my parents are fearful. They always call me up. Where are you? Are you okay? Have you come back? Like whenever I go back from my office. Why am I supposed to be tamed? Why aren't you tamed? Why is the system trying to tame me? Why is the system trying to teach me to behave a certain way? Why does the system want me to learn everything? Why is it not enough?
Lloyd Mathias, do you want to come in, Mr. Lloyd Mathias? You know, because it's important to hear what us is saying, because that's unfortunately how many women will be feeling. And I understand this crime is not really gender specific, it's quite gender neutral. But I'm bringing the point of women as well, because in most of these cases, this has been used against women. Secondly, with what's happening across the country for that matter, about how we've had protests out on the street to even get a sense of justice, whether it be against minors or against working women, the tremendous onus seems to be on the women. And now you again have a crime which is enabled by tech, unfortunately, and that's the flip side of anything. There's good, there's bad, but yet the onus is on the women again. Because, you know, and my team made this with much care. They've made a graphics that's run on your screens of what you must do when you enter a washroom, or what you must do to be able to detect a CCTV or a hidden camera. While I saw those points and those graphics, I understood where they're coming from, and I was so overwhelmed myself because I knew this, and I also know that I will not be able to do this in most of the times. What does one do?
Thanks, Sneha. I think it's an important topic, and I must congratulate you for kind of highlighting this issue. Firstly, I think as a society, we collectively owe an apology to Asta, to Saher Bhamla, and to all ladies. I think women in particular, because I think expecting people to do surveillance on something as basic is purely ridiculous. And I think that's a collective failure for all of us. Having said which, just a couple of points, and I think both Mr. Singh and Mr. Dugal did make that point. I think one is, clearly use whatever basic technology that one can have. But I would think the onus of using of technology, you have sensors right now that can detect magnetic field and so on. I think is very often the onus has to be on the person running the establishment. If it's an engineering college, if it's a women's hostel, if it's a normal eatery that has, gents and ladies' toilets, I think this has to become part of what they check for. Besides normal routine hygiene, I think checking for this blatant voyeurism, I think is serious. The second point, I believe as a society which we need to change, I think looking at the whole issue, I know the term that is used is peeping Tom. I think this is much more. I mean, they are voyeuristic criminals, right? So I think anybody who's responsible for this kind of act has to be treated with the same degree of criminal contempt as you would for any other major crime, because this is really affecting, privacy at a very fundamental level. And I think lastly, we've got to realize that a lot of people doing this are not just voyeurs. Very often it's used for revenge porn, it's used for blackmail, it certainly is used for making money, people selling voyeuristic videos. So I think the issue is much larger. But I do believe the primary responsibility has to remain with the establishment. One has to kind of make not just hygiene in restrooms, but also a certain degree of safety in such an absolute responsibility of the establishment owner. Clearly, the expectation for all of us, and I know it's difficult, is that we have to be as aware of our surroundings to the extent possible. But I think the whole issue of enforcement and punitive action, as and when such cases are found, I think examples of this is the one that can reduce things in the future, or it's going to make things impossible for women at large and for society in general. And I think it's truly sad, but I'm happy at least Miran now chose to take this topic and focus on the larger area around it.
All right. Sir Pavan Dugal was trying to respond to something. Mr. Pavan Dugal, go ahead, but also let me add one more question. Do you also want to dwell a bit upon how these videos are also used eventually, the huge dark net around it, and the sale of all of this? Of course, in the current context, we don't know what's happened. Police said they haven't recovered any videos, they haven't recovered any hidden. So, and I'm not talking about the current scenario, but there is a huge enabling environment ecosystem to this crime. Do you want to spend a bit about it after talking about what you're raising your hands for?
Thanks. I was saying that law is highly deficient and is not at all well equipped to deal with such a scenario. Look, when you are using this hidden camera, today all cameras are digital and your camera becomes a communication device. So there is no specific provision under the Information Technology Act for penalizing the act of putting a hidden camera. The law is only concerned when you take the images of a private part of a particular person without his or her expectation, of, when there is without his or her particular knowledge, but at a place when the said person has an expectation of privacy. But then, you know, that talks about the fact that you take a image. I want to go 2 steps backwards. Why don't we criminalize the entire factum of putting in hidden cameras? Well, then there'll be a question, how do we regulate between the so-called governmental or sovereign rights of surveillance versus the private right of surveillance? I think the private rights of surveillance have to be far more toned down. At no point of time, a hidden camera needs to give you the license to record whatever it is. Because the law is only saying, making it a crime, you record and you publish. That's about all. I want to get 2 steps backwards. And I think that's why there's a need for amending the Information Technology Act. Number 2, don't wait for the Parliament till that point of time. At least let the government come up by rules under Section 87 of the Information Technology Act, mandating the next time somebody installs a hidden camera in a public premises, that itself is going to invoke not just appropriate penalty, but more significantly, intermediaries and service provider would lose their statutory exemption from legal liability. That's one. But coming to your question, all this is happening because there is a huge demand. The demand is there in the dark net. And the demand is for new, fresh blood, fresh kind of faces, fresh kind of content. Now, content which is captured in such a scenario is invariably going ahead and arousing the curiosity of a potential person who's going to be viewing the same. So there's a huge demand in terms of money, and because it's being openly traded on the dark net, and the fact is that the law enforcement agencies do not have the wherewithal to go ahead and track down the attribution of these particular cyber crimes on the dark net, which complicates the entire scenario. So I think we'll have to do it from a 360-degree viewpoint. Why only women? I think everybody needs to be made responsible. Number 2, government needs to come up with specific guidelines and rules under Section 87 of the IT Act. Number 3, make it an offense when you are going ahead and putting a hidden camera. Nobody today has got any business of putting a hidden camera for whatever purpose. And number 4, I think let's create more capacity building. It's time for collective conscience of the nation to be woken up to this huge, immense problem. Already the kind of events that have happened have shown us that the time for slumber is gone. The time for action has come right now because the situation is so huge. It's the big elephant in the room which nobody wants to talk about. But this is the big elephant that has to be potentially addressed at the earliest possible opportunity, and everybody has to contribute. Not just the government, the private sector, the civil society, users like you and me all have to have a collective responsibility in this regard. Thanks.
Dugal, I'm afraid I must admit that I did not know that installing a hidden camera or a camera or a CCTV in a public, in a private space was not an offense. I mean, that itself has taken me aback. So, I mean, if you're talking about deficiency in the law, that's the starting point, I guess, and you fairly pointed it out. I'm running short of time. Dr. Vikram Singh, very quickly, to universities, to those who run hostels, to those who run PGs, any institutions, what would you want to tell them as a former cop and as somebody who's very closely associated with, with the university as well?
Sneha, it is the bounden duty of those authorities to ensure absolutely safe, fail-proof and foolproof security of all the washrooms and the area in which the ladies and the gents operate. Absolute, fail-proof and foolproof security for everyone. Number 2, crime has 3 ingredients: mens rea, guilty intent, preparation. And I would feel Once I have a guilty intent and I procure an instrument of crime, even if it's a digital camera, and I install it at a place and a location where I have no business even to go, that means that I have already committed a crime. Therefore, as a hands-on practitioner of law, I feel the moment a digital camera is installed, if I were to install in any, I am liable for punishment, Section 77 of the VNS, and we have had this happen. Therefore, I would like to say that this is absolutely punishable and zero tolerance for all such misdemeanors. And those who have the propensity, as I said before, to which we are reasonably surprised, that there has to be zero tolerance, identify those who have the propensity and the potential to do it, and then give them the fear of the law that they carry and their careers are finished and nobody can help them or bail them out ever.
No, Dr. Vikram Singh, allow me, let me just ask you a question, 30 seconds to answer that. So you're saying that the onus has to be on those who are providing these facilities like a PG, like a hostel, or, you know, whatever the space we are talking about. But what if they don't do their part? Are they liable?
They are liable.
Current law, are they liable?
Absolutely, yes. They are supposed to give you an absolutely fail-proof and foolproof system. And they do not, they have failed in their duty and have failed Astha, and they have failed Saher, and they have failed all the ladies who have been victims of this. And therefore, the college administration, where this has happened, 300 videos being made, and the college cannot just wash off their hands from the case. They are jolly well responsible.
Saher, as a young woman activist, where do you see yourself and this country? Do you see this can change anytime soon? Do you see, as a woman, you'll be finding it easier to maneuver your way around in public spaces, private spaces of the public spaces, if I may?
Hello.
Saher, this question is to you, Saher.
Okay. So I think that it's just getting bad to worst because our law and order is not being very strict with the people who are causing this harm to the females of our country. And you know, I just see no hope. I'm really disheartened. I'm very upset with the way things are going in my country, you know. And I'm staying in a very good locality,
Lloyd
but
Mathias,
even now I've heard.
No, you have made a very strong point, Lloyd Mathias, but I'll leave the concluding remark at you, Mr. Lloyd Mathias, to the viewers. Your last word.
Yeah, I think, like I said, as a society, we have to do a kind of collective soul searching. But I think three clear solutions emerge. I think the first really is about providing an absolute safe space and making people providing that space responsible, whether it's a hostel, a hotel, a public space. I think they have to ensure, besides hygiene, to also ensure that there are no such devices. And today, there's lots of technology solutions. A simple magnetometer that checks for any magnetic activity is indicating that there is something put in. That's one. Two is each of us being far more conscious about our surroundings and our spaces. I think that is absolutely critical. And I think lastly, most critical is to ensure that provisions of the law are strict. So people who violate, people who end up doing this, these kind of misdemeanors get punished severely. I think until that becomes a very, very serious issue, this will continue to be taken as a peeping Tom issue when it's nothing but voyeuristic criminality. Absolutely nothing but voyeuristic criminality.
Right. I mean, one thing is clear. We don't have doubts about now what the problem is. We also have already solutions before which the panelists have given out. While the problem is there, the solution is right there with us, we still don't have any clarity of when is this going to be fixed. The law is the problem, and how it is enforced is the problem, and how it is viewed is also the problem. In between all this are the crimes and the women who are maneuvering their way around it, and of course men as well who are at the receiving end. But Pawan, Dr. Vikram Singh, Saher Bhamla, Lloyd Mathias, as well as Astha Bhardwaj, thank you very much for taking time out so late in the night for this important conversation. Thank you so much. It's time for a very short break. On the other side, we'll bring you all the latest and exclusive with Shashi Tharoor.